Holy shit. This is insane. I cannot believe what I am seeing with my eyeballs right now. Like, I really can't. Welcome everybody to a brand new landscape photography vlog. Here we are at Letchworth State Park. We're not doing astro, we're not doing a sunrise, we're doing something I don't really find myself doing that often, which is sunsets. I'm not really sure why that is. I think this place just has a lot more picturesque views that face off towards the east, so they tend to look better at sunrise than sunset. But we are here at none other than Inspiration Point, which I think, as far as sunset spots go, are definitely one of the best. You also can't go wrong with Middle Falls or Upper Falls, as I think those also have pretty great views and access to really good sunsets. Now, whether or not tonight is going to be one of those is a different story. The projected forecasts for the sunset tonight here started off really, really high, and then it dipped down into about the 65% range, and I'm talking about the My Sunset app when I'm talking about sunset quality. I would definitely recommend it. I've been using it for a couple months now, and it's been a pretty good predictor at, really good, vibrant clouds for sunrise and sunset. So we're putting it to the test today to see how accurate it really is. But I really wanted to come to Inspiration Point mainly because I don't really have that many great sunset photos from this particular area. I had thought about setting up for a pano here, but being at 24 millimeters, and I'm not even at 24 millimeters, I'm at like 28 or 29, and that's just wide enough to get everything in view. And too far to the left and the right, you start to get a lot of branches in the way, and especially since, fall has long since passed peak, they're just bare branches with no leaves on them. It's also pretty windy today, so they'd be kind of just a blurry mess in the background. And we are still a little ways off from sunset. Sunset today is supposed to be at 4:44, I believe, and it is currently 4:14. So that means we've got about 30 minutes before sunset, and we'll really see if these clouds get any better. I would say that they're maybe just a little below the right height. They could start to catch a lot of side lighting, as you can see here. We'll switch over to the view from my camera. But as you can see, the view from my camera, it is picking up some pretty decent lighting here on some of these clouds up at the top. And I'm hoping as the sun gets lower and goes below the horizon, maybe it'll start to catch some of the nice light, like some of those clouds over there are. But again, only time will tell. So that's basically the composition. I thought about maybe cropping in a little bit more, but I kind of like just the super wide shot here. I'm not always a super big fan of just going completely wide every time, because I don't think every scene needs to be super wide, but I think this is one of those vistas that you really can't go wrong with that. So I think right around 28 millimeters there, and again, this is 16:9, so it's going to be cropped in a little bit on the top and bottom, which honestly doesn't look too bad. But one thing I also want to try to do, this goes back to one of my previous videos, is I'm going to pop on an ND filter and just run a long exposure to see if we can't get any more detail out of these clouds. It really doesn't look like there's too much movement in them, so this is going to be kind of an experiment to see whether or not it's going to make a big difference in the frame at all. So we're going to put that on right now, even though I don't really want to, because it is freezing right now. Not sure the exact temperature, but it is 41 degrees, and with the wind chill, it definitely feels a lot colder than that. So there's been a slight change of plans. The sun has come below the clouds, and as you guys just saw, there is some pretty amazing light coming through. What I've done is put a lens hood on to reduce as much lens flare as possible, and I'm also going between f8 exposures and f16 exposures to try to get a really prominent starburst on that far right side of the frame. And as I do these, I'm making sure if there is a lot of lens flare, I am using my finger to cover up the sun from the top of the frame, not the bottom, so I can blend in a clean foreground if need be. And make sure I do that at f8 as well. As the sun now starts just to dip below that distant horizon out there. Make sure I do that again and get it right. The less cloning out of lens flares we have to do, the better. One thing I hate doing is definitely just spending hours trying to get rid of lens flares. And it is starting again to dip below the horizon, but it's almost a little bit better that way when the sun is being partially blocked for these types of starburst effects, because they're not as intense, and if they're not as intense, there's a little bit less lens flare. So we got our f16, we're going to go back to f8, and I always refocus in between anytime I change the aperture, just out of habit, and there we go. So now the sun has completely, maybe about 80% or so below the horizon, and I think that looks pretty nice. But the real question will be, again, is if we get some really nice light up on these clouds. They might start to pick up some golden colors here as the sun dips a little bit lower, but once the sun goes below the horizon, that'll be another story. So, yeah, that was kind of an unexpected event, so I had to act really quickly there. Literally right as I'm about to put the adapter ring on my lens for the ND filters, it just exploded with light. That was really cool. Always got to be on your toes. So now I've finally gone ahead and put the 10-stop Format High-Tech Firecrest ND filter on the end of the camera, and I just ran a 30-second exposure just to show you guys really quickly what that's doing. I think the foreground is a little too dark, so what I'm going to do is go into manual mode, and I'm going to set the shutter speed to time and leave it on f8, and I'll probably go down to ISO 64, and I'm just going to do this for 1 minute and double the current exposure time just to see if I can get that foreground to be a little bit brighter. And again, it's all about giving ourselves as much options as we can. I don't want to just have 30-second exposures when we could have done 1 minute to 2 minutes, and the longer we go potentially means the more movement and more texture we get in these clouds, which in the end will make for an overall more interesting photo. Now, I did think about putting a polarizing filter on, but I'm pretty sure I can't put both on the end of my camera, so if I had to choose just one right now, it would be just the 10-stop ND. So, got my timer on my phone going. We're at 45 seconds. And as soon as it's done, I'm just going to press the shutter. I probably should have my shutter release cable on if I'm being honest. I'll probably have to grab that out as soon as this one wraps up. Because again, if the clouds aren't moving that much, if they're moving very slowly, a 30-second exposure might not do it justice. And it looks like at 1 minute, we do get a lot more movement and sort of contrast in the clouds. So I really like that a lot more. And honestly, I think I'm going to go a little bit longer to 2 minutes and just sort of keep doubling our exposure time and see what that ends up looking like. And right now, we don't have to worry about the camera moving a lot, just because we're not doing any intense blending between various different frames. So I'm going to start this and start the timer. And as soon as this wraps up, 2 minutes, we'll take a look at the final result. I need to put my gloves back on, too. It is cold. This has got to be the longest 2 minutes of my life, I'll tell you that. 2, 1... All right, so that was 2 minutes. Let's take a look. Now, 2 minutes is looking really, really nice. We're getting a ton of blur in these clouds, and we still have some texture left over. That's one thing you kind of have to be careful with, I guess, when you go too long on a long exposure, is sometimes whatever texture was there just completely blurs into nothingness. So I think 2 minutes is probably the max that I want to do, somewhere between 1 and 2 minutes. And right now that we've done that, because now I can actually see that the clouds do have some slight movement from right to left. I think I'm going to do one more. We are starting to get some really nice color out there as well. I think I'm going to do one more, and this time it's going to be for 90 seconds. And then after that, we'll go from there. Not sure what else I want to do. If I want to keep doing long exposures, or if I want to just do regular exposures, because there again is some nice texture in these clouds, and the longer we go with the exposures, the more texture we remove. But we can always bring back in post by adding more contrast, bringing the highlights down, a little dehaze, etc., etc. So we're gonna do another one here for 90 seconds. I got my 2 second little pre-shutter timer there, and yeah, we're gonna wait another 90 seconds. All right, so we just wrapped up our 90-second exposure, and I think it looks pretty good, but we are starting to get some really nice light in these clouds here, so I'm actually going to pop off this ND filter because I don't think I want to use it anymore, and I'm just going to go back to aperture priority, leave it at f8, and I'm also going to go back to auto bracketing and make sure I'm at 5-step bracket. Refocus on my subject out there, which is going to be Middle Falls, and just going to fire that off. Yeah, these clouds are really starting to light up now. That is just spectacular. So I'm going to put that in there because I do not want to go through the process of putting it away. Yeah, wow. That is incredible. That is absolutely incredible. I'm going to take another one as well. And I'll show you guys these brackets as they fire off. But just look at the color in those clouds. That is something else. And I almost wasn't going to go. I almost wasn't going to come. And if that ever happens, you just got to find the willpower to get yourself the hell out of the house. Because anytime you have a moment where you think, oh man, the weather doesn't look like it's going to be that good, the forecast doesn't seem like it's that good, what have you got to lose? I mean, seriously, what an incredible sunset this turned out to be. I can't even believe this. Holy. And we are starting to get some great color on the river down there. It's starting to pick up a lot of these oranges and reds that we're getting. And it's just making that portion of the photo that much more interesting as it sits there on that right third and acts as a nice leading line into the distant horizon. Now, if we get really lucky, these colors will start to fade from orange into red into pink as the sun dips below the horizon, which I don't think the sun has officially set yet. It should be setting in about 5 minutes or so. Man, I'm just going to keep firing off brackets because my camera is running low on battery, which is kind of a shame, but it is cold. So the batteries are going to get zapped quite a bit, very fast. But even if my camera dies now, I'll be very happy with what I got here on the back of it. I'm going to have to take some B-roll of this. This is insane. I cannot believe what I am seeing with my eyeballs right now. I really can't. All right, so as a safety precaution, I am going to a 7-step bracket because I do not want to blow out highlights. That is the last thing that I want to do right now. These colors are insane. I honestly cannot even believe what I'm seeing with my eyeballs. It is that crazy. It looks like these clouds are on fire. Like they are just burning. I don't know what else to say. I am at a loss for words right now. Officially at a loss for words. That is just something else. I'm gonna readjust the composition here just a tad. I'm gonna crop in a little bit more, try to get as much out of this foreground as possible. See, now part of me wonders, what would a long exposure look like, right? We have so much color, and a lot of these clouds are starting to move out of the way, so we're getting some blue sky back into the shot too. So that is adding for a really nice contrast into the scene. Yeah, something really weird just happened with my battery grip. It said that, well, my camera said it was basically out of battery, but the grip said one battery still had full battery. So I'm not really sure what the deal with that was. So I ended up just taking out one of the batteries and putting it in solo, and we're back to full battery here. That would have been a nightmare had I not been able to get this light that we're getting right now. Wow. Yeah, I think the ND filter's coming on. So I'm gonna switch out of auto bracketing and refocus one more time, and then we're gonna grab the ND filter out of the bag. I'm also, importantly, going to use this air rocket on it really quickly before I throw it back on, just in case there's any dust or anything that got on it when it was in my bag. And we're just gonna do a 30-second exposure. It's telling me it's way underexposed right now. So I'm gonna go up to ISO 400 for 20 seconds and let that run, let it do its thing, and see what we get. I love long exposures, man. It's one of my favorite things in photography, especially with clouds. Water, you know, you see a lot of long exposure water. In fact, you see it probably every single day of your life. But clouds, on the other hand, is not really something you see that often. 'Cause I don't think people really think about movement when it comes to clouds. And yeah, that looks really nice. So we're gonna do a longer than 30-second exposure here. So that means the shutter release cable is going back on, and we're gonna aim for about, I don't know, 2 minutes. We're gonna go back to manual. We're gonna set it to time. We're gonna go down in ISO since we can control our shutter speed length. We'll go to ISO 100, and we're gonna start it right now. So we're gonna do a minute and then 2 minutes. There we go. Yeah, we're now into the reds completely here in the sky. What a sunset. The funny thing is my dad just texted me asking me if I was gonna be doing the sunset tonight. Already way ahead of you. It's also important with these conditions to not get too caught up with the camera or your phone, sharing things around. You really just gotta stop and take it in for what it's worth, because getting to see it with your eyes firsthand is definitely better than getting it as just a photo. Although the photo's nice, but just getting to witness it, that's the best part. All right, we went a little longer, and I'm kind of glad I did. I went to a minute and a half, and that looks really, really good. I'm gonna go up to ISO 200 and do another one, 148, so we're gonna go to 248. And I'm gonna make sure that I get at least another foreground after I take the filter off, because these foregrounds might be just a little too dark to work with as a single raw, you know, with the ND filter on and all. So that's why I bumped up the ISO just a little bit to see if it's recoverable, but just in case, I'm gonna pop the ND filter off, do some regular f8 brackets, and if I need to, we can blend, you know, the foreground and the sky in later on. But man, this is something else. And just like that, the sunset colors have started to almost completely fade here at Inspiration Point. What a show that was. Now, I don't know if I mentioned it, but earlier, my sunset prediction for tonight at Inspiration Point was 94%, which is the highest I've ever seen it. It dropped to 64%, And at that point, I already decided I was just going to go because, 64%, like, I'll take it. I just want to go out and take photos. And I think that's the most important thing. Regardless of the conditions, if you want to go out and take photos, go out and take photos, because you could quite definitely get rewarded with great conditions or not. You still might get something you really, really like, and you never would have taken it had you never gone out. But I think its original prediction of 94% is definitely spot on. I really don't know how it could have gotten much better than that. Maybe if we could rewind time and put all the fall colors back on the leaves. I think that's the only way you make it better, but I mean, that was pretty damn good. Probably, I want to say it's the best sunset I've seen all year in 2023. I had a pretty good one here back in October, and outside of that, I really don't remember a better sunset. Maybe there was one in April at Evangola, but that one I think takes the cake. I think I saw a similar sky while I was driving and didn't get to photograph it. I was just in the passenger seat, squirming around, looking up above, seeing clouds just like that, thinking, man, I don't get to photograph this. I'm just stuck driving back home. But we finally got it. So I just took a few more 7-step brackets here just to secure our foreground, and I think that will do it. Now, I was trying to think of a particular lesson for today's vlog, but I really don't have one. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into Lightroom and Photoshop, and we're going to put it all together. So I'll see you guys back in the studio, where it is a lot warmer. Back to the studio, everybody. Let's go ahead and hop into Lightroom to take a look at 5 different photos from our outing at Letchworth State Park at Inspiration Point, and I'll show you guys which one I decided to fully edit all the way through. And I'll be honest with you, it was a tough decision. There were a lot of really great moments all the way throughout that sunset, and that's just, again, one of the reasons why I like shooting all the way through these types of lighting events, because you never really know which one you're going to like best at the end of the day, because once you get back and you put all your photos on your computer or your phone or whatever it may be, and you go ahead and look through all of those moments, you get a better idea of which one you really, really like. So let's go ahead and hop into Lightroom. So to start things off, we're going to take a look at these 6 photos here, which I have selected to be some of my favorites from the shoot. First and foremost, we have our f8 and our f16 exposures that we used to capture that really nice starburst as the sun came between the clouds and the horizon for a brief period. We got some incredible golden light behind us. Unfortunately, we didn't get too much in the scene in front of us, mainly because I think the sun was at too low of an angle. Had there been a bigger opening in the clouds when the sun was a little bit higher, again, we could have gotten some really nice dramatic light down here in the gorge, on the walls, on the trees, etc., etc. But again, the sun was just a little too low. Although we did get some nice highlights up here in the very top, we still have a lot of this area in shadow. And I also personally just didn't feel like editing out lens flares this time around, even though we had the photos to be able to do that with the photos that we had our finger over the sun. So long as we match luminosities, we should be able to go into Photoshop, blend them together, and just easily paint out a lot of these really crazy lens flares here, and especially some of these harder to get ones over here. Some of these might actually require just hue saturation, going there, removing greens, removing reds, and a lot of these can just be easily cloned out as well. But you also want to have an f8 foreground and not an f16 one because of diffraction, etc., etc. But This one, you know, I like it. It's nice. It's something I would normally lean to if the sunset didn't pan out like the way that it did, because I think this looked as good as it was going to get leading up to this point. Everything that we shot prior to this, I think this was like the peak. You know, we have a beautiful starburst, the intensity of that sunlight really creating some drama over there, and we had some nice texture and some great color up in these clouds too. So this would have been a great thing again to fall back on, had things not have gotten as absolutely ridiculous as they did towards the end of the night. So again, that's one reason we want to shoot all the way through, because you never know what you're going to get, right? It might not always pan out as soon as the sun dips below the horizon. That might just be it, right? Now, moving on to the next image here, we have one of the first long exposures we did post sort of sunset after the sun dipped below the horizon there. And this one I do like quite a bit. I have edited it slightly. This is before, this is after. Now, there are some things that are kind of problematic about this. One is we have some, you know, lens flares here, which we need to blend out and possibly remove. We have a lot of, you know, hot pixels and probably some more noise, although this being shot at ISO 64, it is pretty low noise. But we just have some hot pixels, which come with long exposure, especially this one being 90 seconds. You know, so there are some sort of imperfections. There were some weird reflections down here in the bottom from just, I think, the ND filter being on the lens. I'm not really sure what causes that. Probably would have to just blend in a non-long exposure foreground just to clean a lot of that stuff up. Would be relatively easy. Mainly did this just to capture the movement and the texture in the sky, and I think it did turn out pretty good. Do I like it as good as what came next? Not necessarily, but again, it's still a really nice and sort of unique take. Also, one thing to note too is if we take a look at the river here, we're starting to get some color actually on the surface of the Genesee, whereas before we really don't have any of that, right? It just kind of looks like, you know, very faint orange colors. Doesn't look the greatest, especially when you compare it to this, where we start to get some of those purplish orange colors, and we go even further, and now that river is picking up a lot of those highlights. And also, of course, looking at the sky, it just looks absolutely otherworldly. I mean, the way those clouds were hanging down from the clouds above them, like they were almost like falling out of the sky. They were just picking up incredible color, incredible light, and you could just tell by the pockets of light and shadow just how much texture was in these clouds. Again, like it was just so incredible to see in person, and this photo really captures that very, very well. But again, it's not just about the way the clouds looked. I really like the way the highlights get picked up and the colors pick up there on the Genesee. This one was great, but of course we go a little bit further and we have this image here where the colors were pretty much at their absolute peak. And again, we also have some incredible color down here in the river, picking up a lot of those reds and oranges. You know, there's this one, and you also can see that I did crop in from 28 millimeters to 31. I think I did this just to help get rid of some of these distractions here in the foreground as much as possible. A lot of those, you know, sort of nascent branches there. Get rid of as many of those as possible, and I think that kind of helped to focus in on the whole landscape just a little bit more, get rid of some distractions. But I mean, the sky looks incredible, the river looks great, and then of course we had a long exposure, which this one I still really, really like, and I think I'm going to edit this one all the way through like I normally would, like I did with this photo here, which I've titled Valley of Fire, which is available on my website right now if you're interested. But I also want to edit this one all the way through as well, just because I think this looks phenomenal too. Now, again, with it being a 90-second exposure, there are going to be some hot pixels. There are going to be some, you know, weird lens flares and stuff, but that's why I took a clean, you know, regular, non-long exposure foreground that I can just blend in and get rid of a lot of those impurities and imperfections. And the river, I don't really like the way that it looks too much there. Super long exposure. I think it looks a little bit better. Probably not as smoothed out, right? Because we're kind of losing too much detail at that point. It's mainly just the way the sky looks is what I was kind of after with that, and that sort of artistic license. And yeah, as you can see, this is the final result. I mean, no surprise, this photo really did not need pretty much anything done to it, just because everything looked incredible to begin with. I mean, I added a little pro contrast, cloned out a few of the branches here obstructing the view of the river, and I think there was one tiny little branch sticking out up here in the top right. Ended up getting rid of that, no problem. And that was pretty much it. Added some sharpening, of course. And yeah, again, it really did not need a whole lot. And it looks absolutely incredible. One of my favorite images of the year right here at the very end. And I think it's definitely one of the, if not the best sunsets I've seen all year as well. I mean, there's still a little time left. We'll see if, Mother Nature can top this one. But I don't know. This is a sunset you don't really see all that often. They're definitely few and far between. And that's going to wrap things up here for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. And thanks for watching.